The hardest thing I ever swallowed wasn't pride. It was the silence between my daughter and me. People think loneliness begins when someone dies. They're wrong. Loneliness begins the day you stop expecting the phone to ring. At 82 years old, I had stopped looking toward the window every afternoon. I had stopped setting an extra cup on the kitchen table. I even stopped making excuses for my daughter when neighbors asked how she was doing. If you stay with me, I'll tell you why the greatest misunderstanding of my life lasted 7 years, and why a stack of paid electricity bills changed everything I believed about love. I know something about waiting because I spent 43 years raising my daughter alone after my husband died in a construction accident in 1979. I worked 2 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, and never once let her leave for school wearing torn shoes. There were winters when I wore the same coat with holes in the pockets so she could have piano lessons. I sold my wedding ring to pay for her first semester at college. I never regretted a single sacrifice. Or so I thought. When Emily graduated from nursing school, she hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "You'll never have to worry again, Mom." I believed her. Life, however, has a strange habit of changing promises without asking permission. She married a good man. They moved nearly 600 miles away because of his work. At first, she called every Sunday evening without fail. Then every other Sunday. Then once a month. Eventually the calls became birthday wishes. Then Christmas. Then almost nothing. Every time I reached for the telephone, I found another reason to put it down. She's busy. The children need her. She'll call tomorrow. Tomorrow slowly became another season. Outside, everyone thought I was doing well. I still watered my roses every morning. I still baked apple pies for church fundraisers. I still smiled at the grocery store. Inside my house, silence echoed louder every year. At 75, climbing the basement stairs became difficult. At 77, I stopped driving after I confused the brake with the accelerator in a parking lot. At 79, arthritis twisted my fingers until opening jars felt like wrestling iron. Still, I told everyone I was fine. Pride is an expensive thing. More expensive than medicine. More expensive than heating. Sometimes even more expensive than love. My pension covered the basics, but prices rose while my income didn't. Every month I sat at the kitchen table with a calculator older than my grandchildren. Electricity. Water. Gas. Medicine. There wasn't much left afterward. I quietly stopped buying fresh fruit. Then meat. Then birthday presents for the great-grandchildren I'd only seen in photographs. One rainy Tuesday, I found myself staring at an unpaid electricity bill. I whispered to the empty room. "I'll manage somehow." I always had. The next morning I walked to the utility office prepared to ask for another payment extension. The young woman behind the counter smiled politely. "Mrs. Carter?" "Yes." She frowned at her computer. "But, your account is completely paid." I blinked. There must be some mistake. "No, ma'am. Everything is current." I laughed nervously. "I think you're looking at the wrong file." She turned the monitor toward me. "Every payment. Every month. On time. For nearly 3 years." I stared so long the numbers began to blur. "I never paid these." She looked confused. "The payments were made electronically." "I don't own a computer." She apologized, assuming I had simply forgotten. I walked home more puzzled than relieved. Perhaps the government had made an error. Perhaps the bank. Surely someone would notice. No one ever did. Months turned into years. Every bill kept arriving already marked paid. I told no one. Partly because I feared the payments would stop. Mostly because I couldn't bear discovering that no one cared enough to explain. By the 7th year, The mystery had become another quiet room inside my heart. Then came the afternoon, everything changed. I slipped on wet leaves while carrying groceries from the porch. The pain exploded through my hip. I couldn't stand. I lay in the cold rain for what felt like hours before someone shouted my name. It was Daniel, the widower who lived across the street. We had exchanged little more than waves for years. He rushed over, helped me inside, called an ambulance, and stayed until they wheeled me away. When I returned home 4 days later with a walker and far too many prescriptions, Daniel knocked on my door carrying homemade chicken soup. "You'll need someone to check on you. I'll manage." He smiled. "I know." He returned the next morning. And the next. Sometimes to change a light bulb. Sometimes to carry laundry. Sometimes for no reason at all. One evening, while helping organize paperwork scattered across my dining table, he suddenly froze. He was holding another paid electricity bill. His face turned pale. "I suppose." He hesitated. "I suppose it's finally time." "Time for what?" He sat down very slowly. His hands trembled. "I promised I would never tell you." The room became strangely quiet. "Tell me what?" He reached into his jacket and removed an old envelope. My daughter's handwriting covered the front. My name. My address. Unopened. Daniel looked at the floor. "Emily came here 7 years ago." I couldn't breathe. "She did? You were visiting your church that afternoon. Why didn't she come back?" His eyes filled with tears. "Because she had just learned she had breast cancer." The world stopped moving. "What?" "She didn't want you to watch another person you loved become sick." I shook my head. "No. She asked me to help." He unfolded several receipts. Every month she transferred money into a separate account. "I paid your bills exactly the way she instructed." My hands refused to hold the papers. "Why?" she said. He swallowed hard. "Mom sacrificed enough. She spent her whole life protecting me. Let me protect her without making her feel ashamed." I burst into tears. The kind that begin somewhere deeper than words. Daniel continued quietly. "She called me every single week. Every week. She asked how your roses looked." My chest tightened. "Whether your porch light still flickered." I covered my mouth. "If you were eating properly." I could barely hear him now. "She knew every detail of your life." "But," I whispered, "why didn't she call me?" Daniel looked toward the window. "Because every time she tried, she cried before you answered." He handed me the unopened envelope. "I promised to give this to you only if she couldn't." My fingers trembled as I unfolded the letter. "Mom, if you're reading this, then I ran out of time. Please don't remember my silence as absence. Remember it as fear. I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid you'd spend your last healthy years taking care of me again. You already gave me your youth. You sold your ring. You skipped meals. You worked until your hands hurt. Please let me give you one thing back. Peace. I love you more than I ever learned to say out loud. Please forgive me for choosing silence when I should have chosen your voice. Love always. Emily." I read those words until sunset disappeared. Then I read them again. And again. That night, I walked into my kitchen. I looked at the stack of bills that had once reminded me I was alone. I finally understood. Those weren't bills. They were love letters. Love doesn't always knock on the front door. Sometimes it arrives as a paid electric bill. Sometimes as groceries left quietly on the porch. Sometimes through a neighbor who keeps a promise for 7 long years. We spend so much of life measuring love by conversations, visits, holidays, and photographs. But love has another language. Responsibility. Sacrifice. Protection. The things no one applauds. If you're waiting for someone to love you the exact way you expect, ask yourself something first. Have they already been loving you in ways you've never thought to notice? I still miss my daughter every morning. I still reach for the telephone sometimes. Old habits don't disappear overnight. But every month, when the electricity bill arrives, I place it carefully inside the same wooden box as Emily's letter. Not because it's paid. Because it reminds me that the brightest light in my house was never powered by electricity. It was powered by a daughter who loved me enough to stay invisible. And now, whenever evening falls, I leave the porch light on a little longer. Not because I'm waiting for someone to come home. Because sometimes love has already been there, quietly keeping the lights on all along.